In the mid-1960s, the vibrant city of Beijing became a turbulent inferno as the flames of the Great Cultural Revolution raged through its streets. The young Red Guards, filled with fervent zeal, took it upon themselves to carry out Chairman Mao Zedong's call for a comprehensive cleansing of China. With an unwavering determination, they set ablaze over 2 million books, viewing knowledge as a dangerous threat to their revolutionary ideals. Their fury knew no bounds as they mercilessly beat and banished individuals for the simple crime of possessing wealth or being well-informed. Amidst this chaotic upheaval, the Red Guards unexpectedly turned their attention to an unsuspecting old gardener living under Mao's protective shadow. Perplexingly, they directed their hostility toward this poor, defenseless man. One might wonder what could have aroused the ire of China's impassioned youth against this feeble old soul. What deep, dark secret about China was this elderly gardener concealing? To unravel this enigmatic tale, we must delve into the rich tapestry of China's 2 millennia-long history. Today, Time Capsule invites you to journey with us into the untold story of the last emperor of China, intertwined with the mysteries surrounding this humble gardener's plight. In the late 1950s, Chairman Mao Zedong embarked on his grand vision known as the Great Leap Forward, aiming to revolutionize China's agricultural sector through communist economic principles. But the consequences of this ambitious plan were devastating. A catastrophic famine swept across the nation, claiming the lives of nearly 50 million Chinese, an unprecedented agricultural catastrophe in human history. As dissent brewed within Mao's political party, an uprising sought to replace him. In response, Mao rallied the passionate youth of China against the elites and the wealthy. Tragedy struck countless families as loved ones and homes were lost. An authoritarian dystopia took root, leading to the destruction of valuable treasures worth millions in gold, paintings, furniture, and other forms of art and jewelry. The infamous Red Guards were at the forefront of this upheaval. They set out to emulate their leaders' fervor by burning books, ransacking cultural sites, and persecuting those deemed not sufficiently revolutionary or bourgeois. Even members of the Chinese Communist Party were not safe if they dared to voice opposition to Mao's policies. Amidst this chaotic storm, an old and unassuming man who had lived a simple life as a gardener and mechanic became an unexpected target of the Red Guards. The reason behind their ire was that this unassuming man, named Henry Puyi or Xiangtang Puyi, was the last remnant of China's imperial era, a time that had lasted for 2 millennia. Before being appointed as an editor by Mao's government, Puyi had lived quietly, blissfully unaware of the tumultuous fate that awaited him. He held the title of the last emperor of China, having been coronated and abdicated 3 times during his eventful life. However, the Red Guards' efforts to demolish the symbol of old China were thwarted, as the CCP swiftly placed him under protective custody. Though the Cultural Revolution would endure for another 10 years in China, Puyi's life came to an end in 1967 when his kidney failed. With his death, the glorious history of imperial China, spanning over 2,000 years, fell into silence. While little was said about Puyi's passing, much was discussed about his extraordinary life. After the passing of his uncle, Emperor Guangxu, Empress Dowager Cixi seized the opportunity to consolidate her power. She appointed Puyi, a toddler at the time, as the heir to the throne, intending to manipulate the strings of authority from behind the scenes. However, fate had other plans in store. Just a day before Puyi's ascension to the throne, Empress Dowager Cixi breathed her last breath. Puyi, now a child emperor, found himself confined within the Forbidden City for the next 4 years. Cut off from his birth family, he was surrounded by eunuchs who dutifully attended to his every whim. Discovering his newfound power, the young boy would command the eunuchs to be punished if they displeased him in any way. The only person who dared to discipline the tiny tyrant was his wet nurse and substitute mother, Chao Wang. Before Puyi could grasp the weight of his imperial duties, Prime Minister Yuan Shikai orchestrated a rebellion, overthrowing the Qing dynasty and proclaiming himself the first president of the newly formed Republic of China. Empress Dowager Longyu, Puyi's regent, was offered amnesty and a substantial sum of silver in exchange for her consent to issue the Edict of Abdication. Unbeknownst to Puyi, he was no longer the emperor, but within the palace walls, everyone continued to play along, allowing him to retain his title and mock imperial status. Courtiers attended to his every need, sumptuous meals were served, and playmates were provided. These playmates would face punishment if Puyi misbehaved. Initially presenting himself as a champion of democracy, Yuan Shikai's true ambitions soon came to the forefront. When the will of the people clashed with his own desires, he cracked down on elected members of the parliament, tightening his grip on power. In a stunning turn of events, Yuan declared himself the new emperor of China. However, destiny once again intervened, and Yuan died before his official enthronement could take place. Puyi, now in his second stint as emperor, received the support of a warlord named Xinjiang. However, his reign was short-lived, lasting only 11 days. Eventually, in 1924, the 18-year-old former emperor was forcibly expelled from the Forbidden City, marking the end of his association with the imperial seat of power. Expelled from his paternal palace, Puyi sought refuge within the walls of the Japanese embassy. In 1931, he relocated to Shenzhen, a region under Japanese control. It was during this time that Puyi, driven by his desire to reclaim his throne by birthright, turned to the Japanese Minister of War for assistance. Japan, already seeking a pretext to invade China and expand its imperialistic influence, saw an opportunity in Puyi's request. This presented them with the perfect excuse to occupy Manchuria, the ancestral homeland of Puyi's predecessors. While Puyi was initially hesitant about ruling only a part of China, the promise of eventually ruling the entire country persuaded him to accept Japan's support. They say the third time's a charm, but for Puyi, there was no such luck. Once again, he found himself as a mere figurehead on the throne, devoid of real power, just as it had been during his previous reigns. This time, his strings were firmly held by the Japanese emperor. From 1935 to 1945, Puyi acquiesced to Japanese forces conducting gruesome experiments on approximately 12,000 men, women, and children in prisoner of war camps set up by the infamous Unit 731. He turned a blind eye to the Japanese army's use of horrifying weaponry on Chinese soil, with authorized storage facilities in Manchukuo, resulting in over 200,000 deaths. Additionally, the forced labor imposed on Chinese civilians in Japanese POW camps led to numerous casualties, as 10 million Chinese civilians were mobilized within Manchukuo. Puyi's reign during this period was marred by collaboration with the Japanese, and his complicity in the suffering inflicted upon his own people casts a dark shadow over his legacy. As the imperial forces of Japan ravaged China, Puyi, once the emperor, had become a mere pawn in their grand scheme of domination. As the war to end all battles came to a conclusion, Puyi's reign as regent officially ended. On a fateful day, the USA dropped the devastating atomic bomb on Nagasaki. Soon after, the Soviet Union invaded Manchukuo. The battle for Manchukuo continued for nearly a week, and during this time, Puyi was caught while attempting to escape to Japan. Instead of being taken to Japan, the Russians sent him to Siberia. In the depths of his heart, Puyi believed this was the end of his journey, anticipating an inevitable termination. However, to his surprise, he was taken to Chita, where he was treated with an unexpected level of respect and given a life of relative comfort. Acclimating to the Russian lifestyle, Puyi enjoyed 3 square meals a day, afternoon tea, and was attended to by doctors and nurses. Books, board games, and a radio were provided to keep him occupied, and for a while, he even dared to dream of a lavish life in exile in the United States or Great Britain, with the help of his millions of dollars worth of jewelry and art pieces that he still possessed. But the situation between the USSR and other Allied nations soured rapidly after the end of World War II. The Soviets had no intention of handing over their prized prisoner to their now-turned rivals. Instead, they kept a close watch on the power conflict between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong in China. Both sides, regardless of who emerged victorious, wanted Puyi back for one grim reason: to execute him. Desperate to stay in Russia, Puyi begged the Soviet Union to let him remain there permanently, offering to testify against the Japanese government at the International Military Tribunal for the Far East. He was careful not to confess his guilt, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. The Soviets ignored his requests and sent him to Khabarovsk, where his privileges diminished significantly. Despite the reduced privileges, Puyi continued to lead a relatively comfortable life. It was during this period that he developed a newfound passion for gardening, tending to an empty lot of land provided to him along with his fellow residents. 5 long years after being captured, in August of 1950, Puyi was sent back to China following Mao Zedong's decisive victory. However, his fate wasn't execution, but rather imprisonment. No longer the emperor, Puyi experienced the harsh reality of prison life. He was incarcerated at the Fushun War Criminals Management Center in Liaoning Province and subjected to the re-education program for political prisoners. The details of his experiences during imprisonment remain scant, though it is known that he wrote his autobiography while there. In 1959, Puyi was granted amnesty by Mao Zedong, and from that point onwards, he became a vocal advocate of Mao's policies. The reasons behind his advocacy remain intriguing and open to wonder. Thanks for watching the video, and if you found it informative, please like and subscribe to Time Capsule for similar content. We look forward to sharing more knowledge with you in the future. Until then, take care.